Alright, hello and welcome to another video. Now this is going to be a sort of broad overview of what I've done with this in-stacking Trickster character over the course of the Affliction League. I think I'm having it at a point right now where I'm really happy with the config, and so I'm just going to go through kind of everything right now, so this might be kind of a large video, and I might repeat a little bit if you've been watching the previous build update videos, but I want this to be sort of self-contained, you know, I want this to be all-encompassing, so I'll go over everything. I'll speed through the bits I've covered in the past a little bit, but yes, hopefully you'll like that. And as a quick disclaimer, this is not a build guide. It's not meant to be a build guide. Don't try and one-to-one copy it. I know the gear is extremely unethical at this point. I do have previous older POBs where the gear is much less unethical, because I have been playing this character from League launch, pretty much. This is just going to go over sort of the interactions and stuff I'm doing defensively and offensively, and maybe you can find that interesting. Maybe you can take a little bit of that into your own build, or make some version of this. But again, this is not a build guide. If this was a build guide, I'd put all the effort into making it accessible and stuff, and this is not. This is not the intention of this. This is more of a, I guess, maybe entertainment piece. I know some of you quite like these videos, but yeah, so just take it with a grain of salt, okay? But yes, so this is my in-stacking Trickster. Now, the goal throughout the entire league, when I've been playing this character and building it, has been to make it sort of steamroll through 100% delirious content with like as much juice as possible, so like elevated sextant, winged scarabs, abyss stacking, and like as many wisps I can possibly get. And I think right now it is at a point where that is basically the case, which is very cool. I'm very happy about that. I leveled from 99 to 100 very easily doing these types of giga juice maps, so that felt really good. So yeah, I'm going to go through sort of how I did that and all the different offensive and defensive options I've gone through, because I'm quite happy with all of this. And this is also, there's been a lot of changes since the last update video even, so alright. So, this is an in-stacking Trickster using Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation. So let's quickly go over that skill. This is a new skill for this league, a Transfigured Gem. A lot of people have played the skill and gone over it, so I'm not going to go crazy through it. But basically, every single projectile from the skill can hit the same target multiple times, is the main line. And it sort of looks like this, with a Nimbus. Obviously without Nimbus, it like looks like this, right? So the way you abuse this is you get Sniper's Mark on an enemy. So with a 21 Sniper's Mark, this gives you 5 splits, and then this scales further with Mark Effect and Curse Effect. And then you attack the enemy with all these projectiles. If you have a Nimbus, you have to stand right inside them, so everything hits. These all get split, so every single projectile splits at least 5 times, and then all of these different projectiles will then return to you, and since you're inside the enemy, they will shotgun into the enemy, and you'll get like 50, 60, 70 hits, and it'll do absurd single target damage. So this is the main interaction we're using for damage. It's really crazy good, and yeah, so this makes it so that the skill scales absurdly well with both projectiles and with Mark Effect. Mark Effect actually is a very powerful modifier. It's very close in power level to +1 proj, and a lot cheaper than +1 proj, so just keep that in mind if you're trying to do something similar. Scale Mark Effect, very good. But yeah, so this is our main damaging skill. Now, normal Tricksters in previous leagues used Power Siphon and Kinetic Blast. Kinetic Blast for clear and Power Siphon for single target. Power Siphon in this league has been giga nerfed, unfortunately. It's really bad for single target because of the way they changed it. It only ever fires 1 projectile at a single target, so it's pretty much useless. And for clear, it's like, alright, but yeah, nothing really special, unfortunately. So that skill's pretty much dead. And then Kinetic Blast, I was using for a little bit, but you can see that right now I'm actually only using Kinetic Bolt, both for clear and single target. Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation actually becomes quite good for clear when you start putting stuff like Fork and Chain on there. Which is really nice. So Fork and Chain normally don't combo super well together because like one has to happen, then the other one happens, so it's like gets very delayed. But the way Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation works, if you look at the final line there of the blue text, modifiers which would cause projectiles to fork instead cause them to change direction additional times, and Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation has a thing on the gem where each time it changes direction, a secondary projectile breaks off. So what happens is that when you put Fork on here, you just get a bunch of different projectiles because it doesn't actually fork, it just changes directions, and then those secondary projectiles spawn, and you get a bunch of stuff everywhere. So because of this, it doesn't actually fork, so it doesn't like take up time or anything, so that means that it can immediately chain. So that's why those two work quite together in order to give you a really nice clear. And then obviously for single target, you do the old Sniper's Mark shotgunning in order to do you know, hundreds of millions of damage to enemies, which is very cool. Alright, so why are we in-stacking, and what are the benefits of in-stacking? Well, in-stacking, like many stats stacking, is sort of, you know, bad to mediocre, early to mid budget, and then at the high end sort of gets a lot better. And it scales every single part of this character. Like, again, most good stat stackers should. I think the main stat you are scaling sort of scales both defense and offense. I'll go over sort of how we're doing that. So offensively, we are scaling it through, first of all, there's this 1 mastery over here, the 1 mastery, which gives us intelligence is added to accuracy rating with wands. So you're just getting basically accuracy capped for free there, because 1600 int, you get 600 flat accuracy. Is really powerful. And then there are a couple of mods on gear which will scale your damage based on your int. So the one has 2 main mods that will scale damage based on int. And these 2 mods exist both as as synth implicits on synthesized wands and as just regular stats on influence wands. I believe Shaper and Elder has these. So these are the two stats you see on the implicit right here. This is as 1 to 6 lightning damage to attacks with this weapon per 10 int. This I believe is the most powerful one. And then also the 1% increased spell damage per 16 int. So these both scale damage based on our int. And then also there's the Ailment mod here. This is a Shaper mod, 1% increased damage per 15 int. Of course, this is a simplex base, so it'll double it to 2%. So these are the sources of damage we're getting from int. Now defensively, int naturally obviously gives us an energy shield. So you can see that every 5 intelligence we get 1% energy shield, which is part of why the energy pool here is so big. And then also there's this mastery right here where we get 1% increased evasion rating per 5 int. And evasion is one of the core ways we are scaling defenses on this build, so it's a very good mastery. Now as for evasion, I made it a very high priority on this character early on to get fully evade capped. So fully evade capped means 95% evasion. Evasion doesn't really work the way you might think it does. So it's not like it's just a dice roll and every time something hits you in an attack, it just like rolls for a 5% chance of hitting. This is not the way it works. They have an entropy-based system for evasion rating in POE. It's sort of there to limit sort of huge upswings and downswings in luck in order to make evasion-based defenses more consistent, I believe is the intention here. I think it works pretty well. So what that means is that with a fully evasion-capped character, so 95% chance to evade attacks, you have 19 guaranteed evades. So every 20th attack, you'll guaranteed get hit, and all the 19 attacks before that, you guaranteed dodge. So that's just straight up the way it works. So it's not random at all, actually. And there's actually a huge difference between being fully capped and being only slightly below. So if I had like 94% evasion rating, instead of having those 19 guaranteed dodges and then getting hit on the 20th hit, I would have 9 guaranteed dodges and getting hit on the 10th. So that's a massive difference, right, already. And then that scales further and further down the less evasion rating you have. So there's a huge incentive to fully evasion capping a character rather than only having like 20, 30k or something like that. Because obviously you get those 19 guaranteed dodges, which is very nice. I'm getting this through right now. Actually, I have less things working towards that on this character than I used to, but the easy way of doing it is because if you're just stacking evasion and nothing else, you need like 180,000 evasion rating in order to hit this 95%, which is even on this gear level is very, very difficult. The way to alleviate that is to use sources of like less accuracy on mobs and stuff like that in order to scale it. So stuff like Dread Banner works really well. That gives nearby enemies less accuracy. And stuff like a blind on enemies works really well. And blind effect also works really well in order to scale that. And I used to use both of these. However, with the changes I made to this character lately, I have so much raw evasion that I was able to drop both of those and only have one source instead that helps my evasion rating out, and that is this one Watcher's Eye mod. So this plus 8% chance to evade attack hits while affected by grace. So what this actually is that it's just flat 8% added onto this number, which is kind of absurd. It's like, I think in contention for like the singular most powerful Watcher's Eye mod actually, which is kind of kind of interesting. But yeah, it's actually absurd how much less evasion rating you need in order to hit cap with only this one mod. So with this one singular mod, it goes from you needing 180,000 evasion rating in order to hit 95%, all the way down to you need 60k, about 59k, I think, evasion rating in order to 95%, and obviously I have more than that. So yeah, that one mod, absurdly powerful for what it is. Obviously offensively it doesn't do anything, but defensively actually really huge when you start specking around it. But yeah, that's how I'm reaching that. So that is one of our main sources of defense. Now, as for other types of defense, I am fully spell suppression capped. If you look at the spell suppression chance right here, so 100%. I'm getting that through some jewels over here. Watcher's Eye has suppression on it, and also this cluster right here. And then I'm taking Spellbreaker. Suppression cap is very powerful as a defensive layer, but then also Spellbreaker gives you an additional 10% suppression. An additional 10% of damage suppressed while you have full energy shield, which also is quite powerful. And we are actually on full energy shield most of the time on this character, so it's actually up quite often, which is nice. And also, importantly, this gives you a 50% chance for energy shield recharge to start when you suppress spell damage. So this is a deceptively powerful mod. In maps, you get hit by spells all the time. Obviously, you don't evade spells, so you just get hit by them all the time. And they get suppressed, and then there's a 1 in 2 chance of this triggering the energy shield recharge. If you look at my recharge rate right now, I have about 6,000 energy shield recharge per second, so it's actually very, very strong. There's a lot of regen there, and I'm using Wicked Ward right now. This is some sort of tech I stole from CaptainLance's build, just straight up. It's very, very good. Basically, what this means is that whenever this triggers, Spellbreak triggers, it just starts your energy shield recharge, and no matter how much damage you take, it doesn't interrupt. So you kind of just have perma, like for most of the mapping, you just have perma 6k ES regen. Which that is a lot, and it helps to really cap you out most of the time. And it's a very powerful combo, these two nodes, especially with the amount of ES this character has. So that is a very, very cool combo indeed. And I'm getting this evasion rating just naturally, and then also I have one suffix here which scales it, which is I'd like maybe a couple more, but yeah, it's very, very powerful that way. And then I'm using the classic Mage Blood Elemental Flasks for mitigation to LE damage, which works quite well. So as for Phys damage, which is sort of a big problem Tricksters tend to have, it's very kind of difficult to get just straight up Phys mitigation. There are a couple of things. So obviously I'm doing CI, so chaos damage is just does nothing to me. That enables you to take masteries like this, or this one mastery in particular, which converts 10% of Phys damage you take into chaos damage. So obviously this functionally is just a 10% less Phys damage taken node, which is very powerful. I have the same stat on my helmet, so from the implicit there and from the fractured delve mod there, I get an additional 18% of Phys DR, which is very nice. And then also there's this mastery right here, which gives you 10% less physical damage taken while you're on full energy shield, as I explained, because of the Wicked Ward Spellbreaker combo, and because of the Overleech here, which also we're taking from the Trickster ascendancy. We are on full energy a lot of the time. As for Overleech, you can actually drop this. I would say if you're going to drop any of these points for some other ascendancy to Forbidden Flesh and Flame or something like that, I would probably drop Overleech. You would have to change out the energy leech support from your Kinetic Bolt, because obviously if you don't have Overleech, then that last line of 25% more damage while leeching energy shield is like barely ever active, which means it makes the gem quite weak. So you'd need another source of damage leeched as energy shield. I would say the easiest way of getting that is through either a charm if you're doing that, or that which was taken jewel. So that is something that, you know, I could probably see myself dropping this as well at some point if I could find that on a jewel, but I've been looking and they have not properly good enough one hasn't popped up yet. So for now I'm doing Overleech and it's very good. I mean, Overleech is always good, let's be real. Now another large source of defense on this build is just the huge energy shield pool, and if you watch some of the previous videos, it's even bigger than it used to be. It's almost twice as big. I think it's the last video I did on this character. It's 16,000 right now, and the main source of that actually is the other ascendancy in this league. So we're getting a second ascendancy this league, and I used to do the, like most people do, the charm ascendancy, where you get charms and you get a bunch of cool stats on those, and it's very powerful because you can get +1 proj and stuff like that, mark effect on charms, and that's very good. However, I did the swap over to Warden of the Magi for a singular point, basically. It's actually 2 nodes, basically, from this ascendancy. And then the main one, defensively here, is the Oath of the Magi node. And this is something that's been popularized by, you know, the people farming the void maps and whatever. It's extremely powerful defensively, on Trickster specifically, because the first line here, defenses from equipped body armor are doubled if it has no socketed gem. So you can see my body armor right now has no sockets. It's a singular white nipple and there's no gem in there. This is because I want this to be active. So the defenses from this armor are doubled. What this means is if you look at this body armor, right, that evasion rating and energy shield up there on the top of the item, both of those are doubled. So instead of 2,757 evasion rating, this is what, like 5,400 or whatever evasion rating. And then instead of the roughly 600 energy shield, this actually gives us 1,200 energy shield. So on its own, that's very good. But this gets even better with the Trickster, because Trickster has this Escape Artist node where it gives you +1 to maximum energy shield flat per 6 evasion rating on the equipped body armor. This node works exactly as good as you would hope it would with Oath of the Magi, in that the Oath doubling works first, and then this scales off of that. So it gives you a ton of energy shield when you cobble these two together. To give you a demonstration, I can put a gem in here, disabling the Oath of the Magi, and we'll see what happens to my energy shield. So I'll just put a random gem in here. You can see I go from 16,200 to 10,700. So it's like a straight up 50% more ES, basically, which I found to be more than worth it for giving up the 6th link. But of course, on lower investments where maybe you have less damage, maybe giving up 6th link would be too much, so then I would probably recommend it doing like charms and doing that ascendancy. But I think on the very high end, this is a very, very powerful setup defensively, because you're getting so much just raw hit pool, which is very cool. And one thing helping out here is that obviously with this you don't get a 6th link, so I'm using a 4 link for my Kinetic Bolt for all of its damage, since I'm only using Kinetic Bolt to clear and for single target. And that is why I have one of these really juiced up 8 link gloves, which we crafted in the video. So this helps a lot with that. So I imagine if you maybe have a worse pair of these, or yeah, on a lower investment level, it might be a little tough to do the swap and maintain a lot of damage. But on this investment level, I think this is super, super good, especially with a really juiced chest like this. It's incredibly powerful because you're getting so many stats from it. Now, the ascendancy is actually probably the hugest swap I've done since the last video on this character. The other nice part about the ascendancy is that we are getting tinctures. So tinctures, there's actually some really cool stuff you can do on tinctures for this build. So if you look at the one I have right now, I think this is sort of the best combo of mods and base you can get. So first of all damage can freeze. It's actually really nice with this character because obviously you need to be just straight up inside mobs in order to fully shotgun. You need to be literally inside them, right? Because of Nimbus and because of the way the shotgunning works. So because of this, mobs that run away from you are actually quite annoying, especially like the small like mushroom guys in maps and whatever who just keep running away. They're really annoying because you need to chase them and be inside them all the time, right? freezing helps with that because they just get frozen and you just stand inside them and kill them. It's very nice. Of course, sometimes the hit DPS is not high enough to fully freeze everything, but it does freeze a lot of stuff in maps, and it's actually very good. But the most important lines here. Okay, so first of all, we get +2 prod from this, which sort of counteracts some of the loss from the charm prod you can get. So you see the weapon attacks fire 2 additional projectiles if you've been hit recently. So in order to trigger this, obviously you are getting hit a lot in maps. This probably is up most of the time, just naturally in maps. But in order to get this consistent on single target, so I always have it up, what I'm doing is I already have a Spellslinger set up for Sniper's Mark. I'll go over that here in a little bit. So I just threw in Forbidden Rite into this Spellslinger setup. So Forbidden Rite it is a chaos skill that basically deals you a little bit of damage every time you cast it. So this deals 5% of your maximum energy shield as base chaos damage. Now, of course, I'm chaos immune, so this actually doesn't do any damage, but that hit still counts as you being hit even though it doesn't do any damage. So this will still trigger this tincture. It'll basically mean that I'm consistently getting hits. So if you look at this, right, fires 5 projectiles. If I do a single fire, you can see that it fired out a Forbidden Rite there. This is the purple cat shooting out. You can see that now it fires 7 projectiles. So this is a very nice way of getting this tincture always to be active. And again, Kinetic Bolt is a skill that scales insanely well with additional projectiles and digital splits. So it's a very, very powerful mod on the tincture. Also, nice little side note here. Since again I'm always being hit, I have this one node on that which was taken, which gives me a chance to get an endurance charge when I'm hit. Which means that if you're looking right now, just when I'm attacking like this and I'm firing off Forbidden Rites, I am generating endurance charges. So that is another source of Phys mitigation. And because my guard skill choice is a more call, this then eats up those endurance charges in order to extend the duration and make it more powerful. So it's a nice little interaction there where this Forbidden Rite Spellslinger setup gives you a bunch of different interactions, which are pretty cool. But then there's also the other mod on this. So this is the other really powerful mod available on Tinctures. This is 19% chance to getting 1 rage when you hit a rare or unique enemy. On its face, it doesn't actually sound that crazy, because obviously there's a similar mod on gloves and stuff like that for the Eldritch Implicit. However, the nice part, the really insane part about this actually is that this has no cooldown, unlike the glove implicit. So that means whenever a singular hit on an enemy occurs, there's a 20% chance with this one tincture to gain 1 rage. Now again, as I mentioned, with all the splits and stuff on Kinetic Bolt, this thing hits a lot. If you're fully shotgunning, right? With my current projectiles and splits, single cast hits an enemy 56 times. And I'm currently, with my current attack speed, hitting 8 times a second. So it's about, what, 400 hits a second? So you take that and you multiply in that percentage chance. So 20% chance to get 1 rage when you hit a rare enemy. So if you're just belting a boss, so 400 hits a second, that's what, 80 rage per second on average when against a big boss or something? Yeah, basically what this means is that whenever there's a rare up or whenever you're fighting a boss, you have perma Berserk, like straight up perma Berserk. It just never falls off. You have too much rage regen to have it ever fall off, and this is very apparent when you're either in maps doing abysses where there's just a million rare mobs around and you're always hitting and generating rage, or when you're actually doing bosses, because Berserk is always up. Of course, with the current damage level of this character, bosses kind of just fall over anyway, so you don't get much chance to see that. But yes, you have basically perma Berserk when there's rares around with this mod. Yeah, so this tincture gives you perma Berserk when there's rares around, and it gives you 2 additional prod. So that's a nice little source of extra damage there from the Wildwood Ascendancy. Now, as you may have noticed, I'm also Spellslinger Sniper's Mark, so obviously there's a big cost to using Spellslinger instead of using something like Mark on Hit or whatever, is that there's obviously a huge reservation. I mean, you see if I unreserve, you can see it takes a lot of mana using Spellslinger with the 2 spells, but there's a big reason for it to use it with Sniper's Mark on this build, because the Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation's damage is so dependent on Sniper's Mark. You really want that thing up on every single enemy pretty much all the time. And this, unfortunately, with Mark on Hit, feels really awkward, because for one, Mark on Hit only hits rares, right? It only gets triggered against rares, and you can't manually cast your mark, obviously, when it is linked to mark on hits. And with these like giga-juiced deli maps, where you're like giga-wisping them, you often find that there's some super tanky magic monsters where if you have mark on hit, you barely do damage to, because they'll never get the mark on them, and they'll just be like giga tanky and it'll feel really bad. And also, even against rares, the mark on hit cooldown is like pretty long. It's like multiple seconds, right? So what often happens is you have multiple rares around and you kill one the mark, and then you have to wait for the cooldown in order for the mark to trigger again. Now, Spellslinger pretty much fixes all of those problems. So Spellslinger, for one, has a way lower cooldown. You can see that my current Sniper's Mark has a 0.4 second cooldown, which is like, it just whatever you're attacking basically is always going to be Sniper's Mark, which feels really, really good. And also Sniper's Mark targets every single mob. So it targets, white mobs, rare mobs, magic monsters, everything gets Sniper's Marked, and it feels great. So I think I would never, I don't think I'd ever mark on hit with this build. I would maybe I'd rather self-cast Cyber's Mark than use mark on hit. I think mark on hit is actively bad for the build, unfortunately. But I do think that Spellslinger is actually actively a really, really good way of applying Cyber's Mark. And also, of course, it is doing the Forbidden Rite activations as well, which gives us both endurance charges and activates our Tincture, which is very nice. Now, if you look at the capacitive tree here, I do have 2 curses because I'm taking Whisper of Doom here with an Impossible Escape. And the second curse is Conductivity. So it just gives you a bunch of minus res to the enemy. The way I'm triggering this is with Cast when Stunned, actually. So currently, I used to have Immortal Call in here as well, but I decided to, because I wanted increased duration on this, because with right now, with Endurance Charges up, which whenever I'm in a map right now and like attacking mobs and like they're hitting you and you're hitting them and stuff, the Endurance Charge generation from that which was taken and the Forbidden Rite interaction is actually enough to where whenever I cast Immortal Call, and I'm just manually casting it for now, I'm actually mostly eating up the full max 3 Endurance Charges that I have here, which really buffs the Immortal Call and gives it more duration. And I kind of want to maximize on that, so I'm decided to link it to an increased duration and just manually cast it, which feels fine and it's pretty good. Right now it has about 50% uptime with all these considered in, which is actually quite powerful, knowing how strong of a DR the Immortal Call gives. But yeah, that's why I'm manually casting this and not having it in the Cast when Stun. But Cast when Stun is an interesting one. So Cast when Stun is quite powerful because unlike Cast when Damage Taken, it has no level requirement and it also has no mana multiplier. So you can put however high level of curse that you want into this, and obviously curses are very, very powerful when you get to use them at max level. They scale very well with levels right now, and that's why it's something like a Curse on It Ring, where you get a level 1 curse, is actually very, very weak in the current state of the game. You really want those max level curses, and Cast when Stun is really nice because I'm currently getting stunned. I have no source of stun immunity. I'm getting stunned every single hit, but the way I'm solving that is I'm using an Immutable Force. So Immutable Force gives 981% increased stun and block recovery. Basically it makes it so that while you are getting stunned, technically you don't feel it at all because they're so short. There's some breakpoints with this jewel. I haven't looked too much into it, but basically it just makes it so you never feel the stuns at all. So this combo here makes it so that you have basically automated curses on everything, because every single hit you take from a spell or anything will trigger Cast when Stunned pretty much, and that will cast a curse and that'll just target everything. And in maps, you notice that pretty much anything you attack will always be cursed, and it feels really good. I think the setup is actually very nice and definitely worth, I think, the jewel slot, because again, the jewel slot doesn't just enable this combo, it also makes you stun immune functionally. So as for auras, there's nothing too crazy here. I'm just running Wrath, Grace, and Haste on my auras right now. And yeah, not much room for anything else because, again, I don't have 6 links, so my socket space is quite limited. But yeah, I'm doing those and then doing Spellslinger as the last little thing to reserve there. So that's what I'm running, and that is good. As for the passive tree, this is a pretty standard looking in-stacker passive tree. You're kind of just like passing around to these cluster jewel slots and then taking power charge nodes and some good ES nodes and some mana regeneration. Again, Tricksters get a lot of damage from mastery, so you want to try and take as many different masteries as you can. And that gives you a lot of damage. Every single mastery of a new type gives you 3% more damage alongside whatever bonuses you're already getting. So that is why you're seeing a lot of masteries in here. Yeah, you're getting these in clusters here where you get a bunch of ints, a bunch of ES, and then you just take a bunch of nodes here, and that's good. So the jewels, I'm doing Ancestral Vision for Ailment immunity because I have a bunch of spell suppression, and I'm actually getting the rest of the, so this gives me 50-something%. I'm getting the rest from the boot implicit here, which gives me 29, and then actually I have that was taken jewel, which gives me 21% chance to avoid ailments while phasing. Now I'm perma-phasing because I'm getting perma-phasing from this Watcher Side, which gives me phasing while affected by haste. So this is quite nice because I don't need, normally what you do is use Ancestral Vision, and then you get a boot pair with both the chance to avoid ailments on the implicit, and then you use the Essence mod on the suffix for an additional chance to avoid elemental ailments, and that'll cap you. Fine solution, but getting this jewel here let me drop the actual affix itself on the item and only use the implicit, which let me fit in that increased energy shield recharge rate mod onto the boots, which is actually quite nice because again it scales the thing that activates when you have Wicked Ward up and your energy shield just goes crazy in recharge. So it's actually quite nice there. Other jewels we're using, Immutable Force again for the stun tech, then Impossible Escape on CI to just save some passive points. It's fairly nice. The Massive Thread of Hope here is in order to grab just some good nodes in general. The most important one is the +1 proj here, which it lets you grab very easily, and then you have some attack pen here, which is strong arm, and then just some random good damage nodes from these here, which is quite nice. You could also take there's some pretty decent ES node right here, which is pretty nice. Although I wouldn't rely on this node for suppression because it's conditional. Otherwise, it's just literally pathing to power charges. This is a partial power charge stacking build, so you get power charges from all the available sources here, and then you have a bunch of ways of scaling damage through power charges. So the ring implicit here gives you more spell damage per power charge, and also +1 power charge. We get +1 power charge from the shield, and then there's nodes like this here, which gives you increased damage per power charge. You get this mastery, which gives you, again, increased damage per power charge. And yeah, power charges are pretty good. Also, it's a crit build, so it just scales crit naturally, which is good as well. So that is pretty cool. As for power charge generation, what I do is, on the tree, we have multiple sources of power charge per kill. So while mapping, you have perma power charges, so that's fine, because you're killing millions and millions of mobs. So that's super fine. And then for a single target, if we're like bossing or something, I would swap in power charge on crit support. So this is generally a swap if you want to do bosses, is you remove chain and fork, because obviously they don't do anything, and then you put in power charge on crit, and you put in volatility. Those are generally the best ones. And that'll give you your power charge generation on a single target, and it will also just give you a bunch of damage, because this obviously gives you more damage per power charge as well, which is quite nice. So I'll do a quick overview of the gear here. So a lot of this I have crafting videos of. Obviously we have the wand right here. This is pretty much as good as it gets for these types of wands. Basically, literally as good as it gets, I think. You get mirror to your instacker wand. You get a bunch of damage. Definitely your biggest damage source here. Then the second biggest damage source is the ring, because again, it helps you because we are scaling power charges. This gives you a bunch of ints, a bunch of damage per power charge, and +1 power charge, and attack speed and multi and stuff. It's very good. So we're using 8-link attack gloves, again, because since I dropped the 6-link, I need another source of, obviously, that's a big damage loss from not having a 6-link, so these help counteract that a lot, and since I'm only using Kinetic Bolt of Fragmentation, I'm not using Kinetic Blast anymore. Very nice having these sort of juiced up link gloves here, which helped you quite a bit. For the helmet, back when I was doing Kinetic Blast, obviously you had to do Crown of Eyes for the helmet since you needed the spell damage conversion, but since I'm not using Kinetic Blast anymore, I'm only using Kinetic Bolt. Kinetic Bolt naturally has the increases and reductions to spell damage, also apply to attack damage from the skill at 250% of their value. This is the node that you are getting from Crown of Eyes in order to get onto Kinetic Blast. So Kinetic Bolt already has this on the gem, so you don't need that helmet, so you can use a rare helmet. And this is why I'm using this Delve base. So this base has a fractured 10% of Phys damage from hits taken as chaos damage, and is very powerful because, again, Phys mitigation is the one source of defense that Tricksters kind of lack. And so it's very nice to get it off of here, and then just craft it with a int and some reservation on there, which helps out, and some mana cost reduction as well, which is nice. Ailment, doing the old simplex memes. Obviously, this is very good for stat attackers. However, this is actually not as good as you might think it is. Like from the Ailment I was using in the previous videos, which cost like, I don't know, 5-10 div or something. It's very easy to craft. I guess it might be slightly more expensive now, but it's basically just essence spam into a couple of reforges in order to get like a tier 1 int and then some tier of all attributes, and then crit multi and spell damage. It's like only a few % worse than one of these, so it's not a huge upgrade, and yeah, but yeah, it is still fine. It's good, and I did record me crafting this, and I'll probably have a video up on that in a bit, but yeah, so I'm using that for the damage for the amulet. It also gives a bunch of ints, which is good. And then obviously Nimbus is very good. Obviously, it does come with the downside of having you required to be literally inside the mobs in order to have all the projectiles hit, because obviously they fire out at random. So unlike when you don't have Nimbus on and you can just do this, and then you can literally just stand in front of the mob, and then you can direct your beams towards them and make them all shotgun that way. With Nimbus, you need to be inside them, so they all hit the boss when they try and leave, which is not the worst, but it is a downside for sure. But the counterpoint of that downside is that you don't get the less damage penalty of 69% or whatever it is from returning projectile support, which is very powerful, and obviously you get additional damage support as well, especially since we're only using a 4-link for the gloves. Links are at a premium. So Nimbus, I think, it's a really, really good option. I think Nimbus is actually better than having, even with this mirror to your ring, which is like absurd. This is like this is like a 25-30% damage increase for me when I swapped over to it. Even with this ring, I think you probably don't want to kill on touch it, because yeah, I think Nimbus is just that good right now. So yeah, I'll probably stick to Nimbus at least for now. It's both also really good for clear, which is nice. But yeah, I think Nimbus is too good not to use, even with a crazy ring like this. As it turns out. As for the chest, another chest here with just a ton of spent all currency, making the prefix as good as possible. Basically, I'm just trying to maximize the amount of defense on this, because again, this gets scaled off of the Oath of the Magi, and then that gets scaled because I have no gems in this. It gives it then a bunch of evasion and a shield. So I tried very hard to make this as good as possible. I could probably divine this slightly better, but that's a project for another day. But yeah, big defense from this chest, and the implicit heal, less damage taken per int, is obviously very good because it's second int. So this is just like, I think this is like 9-10-9ish DR right now from just everything, which is good. And then increased curse effect is very good, because as I explained, every 20% curse effect you get, or mark effect, same thing effectively, you get an additional split. Now, an additional split with Sniper's Mark is about an additional, amount of hits equal to the number of projectiles you have. If you do the math, that's the way it works out. So if I have 7 projectiles and I get an additional split with my Sniper's Mark, it means that I'm getting another 7 hits with my skill, which is a big damage multiplier. So yeah, Curse Effect is a very, very powerful stat. And also it just scales the amount of increased damage that the enemies takes with projectile hits. So it works on 2 fronts there. So I think increased Curse Effect is the best implicit, damage-wise at least, to use on that slot. You could use something like Aura Effect or something, but since not currently using any defensive auras bar Grace, and I'm already evade cap, I think Curse Effect is actually better right now for the implicit, so that explains why. That, and then for the other stats, are tier 1 int, so you want tier 1 int on pretty much anything, and then suppression on there, and then just like the Giga prefixes, which is, yeah. Also that crazy heist enchant there, the 50% increased explicit defense modifiers, again, just another source of scaling defense, and the -3 to maximum sockets obviously doesn't matter, because we don't socket anything into this anyway, and it makes the item look really funny, because it only has 1 socket, yeah. As for the shield, just like +1 power charge, try and get some good spell damage on there. You can get Curse Effect on here as well, which is really big. It's an Ashling mod. I'm going to try and craft a proper one of these at some point. This base is a bit bad, but yeah, this is, for now, it's really good. Yeah, obviously before you get good rares on these slots, you can use Ralkash's Impatience boots and the Malkai's Loop Shield. They are really good damage-wise, really solid, but obviously swapping to rares give you a bunch of utility and defense, which is nice. For the boots, pretty easy. Obviously the avoid ailments for the implicit is nice, and then otherwise it's just like, you know, int, suppression, classic. And then for the prefixes, as good evasion and energy shield you can get. And I'm specifically using the move speed that gives onslaught on kill, because it's currently my only source of onslaught. If you wanted single target, like if you wanted onslaught for bosses, you could do, you could try and fit in a Seal Flask or something, but since I'm mainly doing these deli maps, this onslaught thing is way more than enough in order to have perma onslaught on for mapping content, which is quite good. And I'm using move speed there for the implicit instead of action speed, because again, Tricksters get this node right here, which is 1 step ahead, where your action speed is at least 1/8% of base value. This basically makes it so the action speed mod on boots doesn't really do anything for you, unfortunately. So as long as you have this node, action speed on boots doesn't do much. So I just went for straight move speed. Alright, so I think that's it for everything in game. Let's go over and jump to the POB and look over all the stats and stuff. Alright, so this is the current POB of the character as of right now. You can see 1600 int, quite respectable defenses here. Right now sitting at 451 million single target, and that is with Awakened Fork. Obviously you can increase this by doing the swap to power shot on crits, which you would do for bossing. So for bossing, this would be closer to 500 mil single target, which is very quite powerful, I think. Quite good, certainly very good enough for the maps I'm doing. But if this is even with this shows you actually how good the skill is, right? Because I'm sacrificing a lot of offense in order to get defense on the character. Like the tree doesn't have a lot of damage nodes at all. Like I'm not even taking these crit nodes or anything. Because I just value like stuff like this ES here more, because the maps get so rippy. It's nice being tanky. And notably, this is actually not very cheaty defense numbers at all. This is without the guard skill. If I toggle on Immortal Call right here, you can see sort of what this does with these numbers. Because again, Immortal Call gets to eat the endurance charges, so it like giga buffs itself. And Immortal Call does have, if you take a look here on the little calcs, right now Immortal Call has a 48% uptime, so it's actually up quite often, which makes you pretty tanky with this. So it feels quite nice, yeah, to play. So it's pretty good. And this is with 75% auras. If you want to make this truly immortal, you could go for 90% auras with the jewel and just scale max res. This is fine. This would work. You'd probably switch out haste as an aura and instead run up purity and then use that in order to scale your max res. This would make it extremely tanky to early damage, which would be very, very good. But I think this is plenty for the content I'm doing, and I think what I've found is that on this character, I'm tanky enough to not die to these maps, so I've been trying to just scale more damage now, because the more damage you scale, the less lag you have in the maps, because that is a problem for sure. The Giga-juiced deli maps, they do lag a little bit, so I'm trying to get my damage up there to where I can kill things fast enough to where I'm not going to get super laggy from having so many hits all the time. So that, you know, helps. But yeah, you can see this stats right here. Otherwise, yeah, nothing too crazy POB-wise, but yeah, you can see that's sort of what we got going on here. If you're curious about the config here, I am using, I do have onslaught here. I guess you could turn this off if you want to, because pure single target onslaught isn't on, but I'm sort of accounting for mapping content, because that's mostly what I've been doing. I only do occasional bosses. So as for Pantheons, if you're curious, I'm using Solaris right now because it's just defensively very good. Also I'm using Solaris because crits are a problem in this league, because when you get a bunch of blue juice, obviously that scales the monster's crit immensely, very noticeable. And the part of the Solaris Pantheon here that take no extra damage from critical strikes if you have taken a crit recently is actually, I think, pretty much good enough to make the crits not really do much to this character. So I used to take Mistwalker, which is the Assassin Ascendancies. I used to Forbidden Flesh and Flame this in order to be crit immune. It's quite good. You get elusive as well, which is nice, but I don't think it's necessary anymore. I think this this Pantheon is just plenty enough to get it's plenty enough crit mitigation basically to where I don't need to take anything else. I'm pretty happy with that. For the Mind God, I'm just using the I'm not using this anymore. I'm using the curse effect one because it's nice. You can use whatever you want. Pantheon's okay or whatever, but I think Solaris is the best one overall for the major. Otherwise, I have some custom modifiers here. This tradition proj here is just simply because POB doesn't calculate the tincture properly. So since we always have the tincture up with the forbidden rite, so I put it in here. You put in lightning exposure here because I'm currently taking the mastery of lightning exposure on enemies when I suppress their spell damage. This only works on spellcasting enemies, but a lot of enemies do cast spells, so I just have it ticked right now. You can untick this if you want to, and you'll see what kind of effect that has on the damage. Yeah, it's up enough of the time to where I feel that is a fair enough tick. But yeah, so this is the character right now. Yeah, I think it's very, very solid. There's one singular Abyss mob that I'm trying to work on that I think does, when you get like 8k purple juice on a map, which does, well, maybe not 8k, but like between like 6k plus or something of purple juice on a map, there's this one Abyss mob that like throws mines or some shit, and that one can really, with a lot of purple juice where they get like giga projectiles, there's some sort of shotgun effect happening with those mines where that does actually really hurt this character. So I'm trying to fix the mitigation on that. I think it's just a Phys spell, so I think just getting more mitigation there would help. Otherwise, nothing really kills it anymore. It's very good. The recovery is super good. You get Overleech. You have the Wicked Ward tech with Spellbreaker. It's extremely comfortable to play. I think Trickster as an ascendancy is just so nice. I think yeah, in the future I'll probably play a lot more Trickster builds because holy crap, the defenses are so nice. It's actually like the Trickster defenses are deceptive because even when you don't have these insane POB numbers, even then they feel really good because the Trickster just natural recovery from stuff like Spellbreaker, from stuff like Overleech. It just feels amazing, even if your mitigation levels are lower. I noticed this early when making this character. I was trying out this character both as a Trickster and as a Deadeye. Deadeye had really compelling numbers because I could actually get the mitigation levels quite high even on a Deadeye. Obviously, the tree is very similar. You just start down here and then you path up instead, and you take like these ore nodes and this jewel, but otherwise the pathing is like pretty much the same. So the mitigation levels were really high on Deadeye, and honestly, Deadeye has like way high damage because you just naturally get a bunch of damage from the ascendancy. Since I actually have a level Deadeye made, and I actually literally tested this character out, I just swapped my gear over and the tree and stuff like that, and I just didn't really, I just didn't find it as good as this character. It felt noticeably worse, noticeably squishier, because the recovery stats, which don't immediately pop out in a POB, are just so good on a Trickster. Alright, so I think that is it. That's most of what's going on with my character, and that's sort of what I've been doing with it up until now. So we're what, 3-4 weeks into the league-ish, and yeah, this is where it's at right now. I'm gonna try and keep upgrading it, but I think this shell is what I'll stick to, at least for the foreseeable future, because I think it is quite strong. I'll be very happy with it. So yeah, hopefully you found this video at least entertaining. Hopefully you didn't actively dislike it at least. That's I guess my one hope. But yeah, as always, thanks for watching, and yeah, I think this might be the last big build update video for this character, this league, unless something huge changes later on. But for now, at least, this looks like the version I'm the most happy with and the most that I have had the most fun with so far. So yeah, super fun making this character and working on it. I'm gonna keep doing so for a while still. I'm definitely not done with this character yet, but yeah, alright, cool. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.